To my kicker now, it takes courage, it takes selflessness, and it takes integrity. It is a dangerous thing to do and a dangerous place to be. It can cost someone their life. It can separate someone with their family, temporarily or even permanently. You can get hurt, you can get killed, and if you are lucky, you can get arrested and charged in court or forced to look for safety elsewhere in exile away from your country. Yet, despite all the personal sacrifices, it is a most thankless task or undertaking with near zero benefits to those who take it up. These are hard facts about being an anti-corruption whistleblower. This week, former Governance and Ethics Permanent Secretary John Githongo got his bill for his dossier on the Anglo leasing scandal. It is a whopping 27 million shillings as damages to former Internal Security Minister Chris Mangoro, who was in charge of the Ministry of Internal Security. The ministry, it should be remembered, was in charge of the Anglo leasing related projects that included a sophisticated passport equipment system from France and a forensic laboratory for the police sourced from Britain. Predictably, shock and anger has greeted the High Court's award against John Githongo. Anti-corruption crusaders have urged Githongo to challenge the High Court decision, and he has confirmed he shall do exactly that. And as the Githongo-Murungaru tussle goes to the next level of our justice system ladder, it should never be forgotten that the facts of the Anglo leasing scandal can never be swept away. First, the Anglo leasing deals were real, not fiction. It cost taxpayers money, period. Secondly, the Anglo leasing deals could only be facilitated through government offices, and that was the case. 3. John Githongo held a high-profile position in government and in State House no less. He was President Mwai Kibaki's right-hand man with access to top-level officials and high-level information, some of it recorded on tape. He was a permanent secretary, not some low-level hangabout, and he captured his findings with the combined ability of an intensive researcher and a rigorous investigative journalist. These are facts and findings about Anglo leasing which will neither change nor go away. And for the personal sacrifice, the least the country owes Githongo is to bring the perpetrators of this scandal to book. The current president, Uhuru Kenyatta, traveled all the way to London while he served as the chair of Parliament's Public Accounts Committee to meet Githongo at the height of the Anglo leasing probe. His anti-corruption war that seems to function in fits and starts would get a permanent pride of place in our history books if he simply finally exorcised the ghosts of Anglo leasing. For whistleblowers like Githongo, who witnessed firsthand the proceedings at the engine room of official corruption, the greater test would be their resilience. Will they ever have the courage to do the right thing, or will they crumble when the hefty bills come or when danger strikes? Well, for the good of the country, one hopes they will keep the courage alive. But again, it will no doubt come at a high personal cost, quite literally sometimes. That's my kicker.
Wow. Very well. I'm sure by now you've heard about Mangoro Primary School in Ganze constituency, Kilifi County. And if you have not, let me give you a quick update, complete with pictures and videos. To say the school is in a poor state is an understatement. Actually, it is arguably the shame of Ganze constituency. In fact, let me put it more bluntly, the shame of Kilifi County, the shame of our education structure. Just imagine how difficult it is for teachers and pupils in that school. And make no mistake, the school is in Kenya, a country that has recently invested billions of shillings in transiting from one education curriculum to another. a country that has invested billions of shillings to fulfill a Jubilee Coalition promise, the controversy-ridden free laptops program, a promise that was not sufficiently kept, a promise that quickly mutated to a digital literacy program that is yet to be realized in many public schools. The Mangoro primary school situation is just a small pointer to the mess that is the infrastructure in many public primary schools. And remember, pupils in these schools will sit the very same Kenya Certificate of Primary Education KCP examination later this year with their colleagues in private institutions. For a country that has been independent for 56 years, it is a shame to see pupils learning under trees in Turkana, Baringo, Kwale, Wajir, to mention but a few counties. It is unexplainable how the president, his deputy, cabinet secretaries and principal secretaries can be riding in fuel guzzlers, members of parliament pocketing millions of shillings in house allowances, MCAs blowing millions of shillings catwalking to foreign destinations in the name of benchmarking trips, and governors living lavish lives as kings of counties while thousands of pupils struggle to quench their thirst for education in such a poor schooling environment. And make no mistake, the Education Ministry receives billions of shillings every financial year to construct classrooms and improve infrastructure in public schools. Every member of parliament in the 290 constituencies receive at least 100 million shillings every year in National Government Constituency Development Fund, formerly known as CDF, to finance national government projects such as education and security. What am I saying? Priorities, priorities, priorities. The heartbreaking Mangoro Primary School images should haunt the president, his deputy, the Education Cabinet Secretary and his team at Jogo House, as well as the Ganze Member of Parliament, Teddy Mwambire, and all those concerned. That is my punchline.
Tonight, I am confused. Here is why. Now, there are reports that the president and his deputy will receive a pay rise. Did I say a pay rise? Yes, a 3.9% pay rise. The Daily Nation is citing Treasury documents that show that the combined annual pay, that's basic salary and allowances, of the top two leaders will rise from the current 36.6 million to 38 million. Now, let me take you back to the fact that they reportedly took a pay cut before the 2017 election to curb the ballooning wage bill. I say reportedly because it's difficult for us, as you can imagine, to independently confirm that they indeed took home less money as a result of that very public announcement. Of course, the ping-pong of this wage bill is nothing new. In fact, many will remember the now famous wage bill conference that was mounted by the SRC right after the 2013 election, when the term wage bill was all the rage. The emotional rush of the election was still at an all-time high. President Uhuru and his deputy were still heady from their win, promising to tame this monster called the wage bill. In that frenzy, they promised a 20% pay cut and urged all other state officers to follow suit. They claimed the money would be put into a kitty. Now, both the then chair of SRC, Sarah Serem, and Treasury CS claimed that they had indeed taken the pay cut. Rotich even telling us that the salary cut account had close to 65 million shillings, but that, quote, the usage of the funds is yet to be determined. Then came the second report of the Africa Peer Review Mechanism Conference earlier this year, at which the president restated his commitment to reducing the wage bill. He said, and I quote, "In this regard, I want to make it clear, I fully support the guidelines issued by the SRC on salary scales for public and state officers," end quote. Yet, here we are today, with this new revelation that he and his deputy are slated for a pay rise. All of this at the height of the debate over the MP's increased pay perks. A few questions come to mind. Is he not on the same page with Treasury on this issue? He is, after all, the man who runs the entire executive. Will he take this pay rise? And whatever happened to the monies in that salary cut account? And what are we to make of this never-ending justification for state officers to get house allowances, sitting allowances, car grants, mortgages? They might soon ask us to give them an allowance to help them process the many allowances going into their bank accounts. This at a time when there is increased inflation, decreased access to loans, increased cost of living, and more proposals from the same political class of increasing the size of government in a possible referendum. And the unity around this is amazingly familiar. And when we question, all they seem to be telling us is, what greed has put together, let no citizen put asunder. And that is my take tonight.
Now, tonight, my angle is on the railway line. I mean the SGR, or the new terminology we have lately been told about, the MGR. Let me start from the beginning. A few weeks ago, the ODM leader, who is also the president's handshake partner, or brother as they like to put it these days, made a big announcement. You remember that? The whole sentence was in Luo, but the translation became national news. In summary, he announced that he would go to China with the president, and that together they would, in his words, sort out this issue of the SGR going all the way to Kisumu. In fact, he even gave the route this line would follow, namely Naivasha, Narok, Bomet, Sondu, and finally Kisumu. The ODM leader, speaking in broad daylight, further explained that this brand new SGR line would be accompanied by a brand new port in Kisumu that would support a brand new special economic zone that was to be set up in that region. Now, the port, according to Raila, would then be used as a transport point for all manner of goods to the wider East African region. Now, I'm recounting this old story because now the CS in charge of transport, James Macharia, is saying that there will be no railway line going to Kisumu. None. Zero. Null. Remember that story that they would rehabilitate the old railway line to Kisumu instead of the SGR? Well, even that now is off the table. The CS now says it simply will be too expensive. Now, I do not want to get into the economics of all of this SGR thing, but I am confused. I do not understand how things work in this country anymore. Isn't there anyone left in this country who can explain to us important things in such clear a manner that we would all just understand? First, Raila Odinga tells us about this SGR line to Kisumu. No one in government challenges his statement, and yes, we had a legitimate reason to believe Raila. After all, is he not on some billboards in town promoting that government project called Huduma Number? So who told him about this railway line? Did he just invent that story complete with a route map and all that elaborate story about a new port and a special economic zone? I doubt it. But what about James Macharia? He is properly in government, isn't he? So he must know. One day he's talking about the old railway line being rehabilitated. The next day it's too expensive. I give up. This is not about the SGR. We could have many opinions about that. This is about an untidy government, a government that is either incapable of communicating clearly or just doesn't take us seriously enough. Isn't it perhaps a good time to call on the two gentlemen who have hardly been seen since China, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, to just come out and tell us what no one seems to be saying? That's my angle.